Well, good day, folks. Hope things are going well for you. Today I'm continuing my series on The Secret, a book by Byron Price. And today I'm up to page 74 and page 75. We're going to talk a little bit about the household unfamiliars, uh, otherwise known as the calamitates mater familia. Calamitates mater familia, otherwise known as the household unfamiliars. So in looking through this particular article, I see that in one image we have the devil and an egg. So I think maybe we need to look into deviled eggs. Uh, I guess, what I get out of the first picture. And the deviled egg is standing on a grate above some six pack of beverage. Other than that, the refrigerator is fairly empty, and the devil is looking towards the back wall or towards the corner of the refrigerator, thus, where most of the cooling components are of the refrigerator. In the second image, we have some vegetables below a shelf, and then we have the devil on the shelf with some Gold's horseradish, some Hellman's mayonnaise, some McElhenney Louisiana Tabasco sauce, some malto meal, some vodka in the background, and I could not quite figure out what a couple of the other items are in this image. I don't know if they are the important ones since I could not uh, get the name off the top of the lid of that last one. And maybe it says Louisiana again. I don't know. And then the other jar back there is basically a canning jar, and there's some eggs over here, and so again, deviled eggs. So I don't know if we want to start there or not, but I guess we can start with the deviled eggs. The deviled egg is goes back to ancient Rome, where boiled eggs were seasoned with spicy sauces and served as a starter meal during gatherings and feasts. So, in other words, the deviled egg is a an hors d'oeuvre, if you will, and it goes back to ancient Roman customs. And so I don't know if this is, uh, you know, instructive. I mean, it's Northern America, Andalusia, and Rome is where the deviled egg has had its go at it. And so so the other thing is a deviled egg is also called a butterfly bomb. And this has to do basically with a uh, as an anti personnel used by the Luftwaffe during World War II. And the bomb contained that carried the SD-2 bomblets and released them in the air were nicknamed the deviled eggs. Yeah, I don't know if Byron was really going to go for, uh, that obtuse of a, I don't know, a description. So I think that probably isn't part of it. Um, so let's next talk about the history of refrigeration. And since we basically are talking about refrigeration here, it'd be fun to know that the history of using ice to store food goes back to the Chinese, and it goes back even 1,000 BCE to where the Chinese cut ice in order to store food. Uh, it became popular in St. Louis as a way to store beer. And the underground caverns in St. Louis uh, became popular for such brewers as Anheuser-Busch and the Lemp family as a place to preserve beer. And so, using ice as a preservation agent to store beer has certainly been around. And then also the meat packing. And so, the modern mechanical refrigeration process uh, was basically a number of inventors, including Jacob Perkins, who invented the first vapor compression system in 1834, and a German professor by the name of Karl von Linde patented a new process for liquefying gases in the 1800s. But the more modern refrigerator, which we're looking at today, has its origins to Fred W. Wolf and to William C. Durant and a few others. So let's just look at one of the inventors. So there's a company by the name of Domlre, Domelre, otherwise known as the domestic electric refrigerator. It was one of the first domestic electrical refrigerators, was invented by Frederick William Wolf Jr. in 1913. And the company started in Chicago. Ding, ding, ding. History of modern refrigeration, Chicago. Where did we find one of the casks? Chicago. And so anyway, the unit replaced the block replaced the block of ice in the ice box with an electrical powered cooling device. And it was a revolutionary invention at the time. And so he basically sold his rights to the Packard Motor Car Company in Detroit. So here we have the one of the early inventors of a refrigeration unit selling it to a company out of Detroit, the Packard Motor Car Company. I bet that happened even more than once. And it did, because William C. Durant, the founder of General Motors, who was born in Boston, Massachusetts. Okay, we're probably on the right track here because we're talking about somebody born in Massachusetts. He was the son of William Clark Durant and Rebecca Folger Durant. Okay, Folgers, you may have heard of Folgers before as well. All these captains of industries, just they date back. He started out as a cigar salesman in Flint, Michigan. Well, I think there was a, um, a cigar in one of the images myself. Anyway, so he partnered with Josiah Dallas Dort and founded the Flint Road Cart Company. And I just think it's so interesting that we have a Hosea Dallas. Dallas, Dealey Plaza might come up again. So anyway, Durant owned, or basically this Boston Durant owned the refrigeration rights for a while, and then he sold them off and found more interest in the automotive industry in Detroit. Okay, who else do we have? So Nathaniel Brackett Wales was born in Braintree, Massachusetts, and he is credited with one of the early patents on refrigerators, washers, and vacuum cleaners. And he is a co-inventor with detonators used in bombs in World War II. Oh, Wales, he graduated from Harvard College. How many of these people that this guy put in the secret have ties to Harvard College, which is where National Lampoon kind of got its start, right? Okay, so he is the founder of the Kelvinator Home Appliance Company in Detroit, Michigan. So when we're talking about these household unfamiliars, it's interesting how much of these connections go back to Detroit, Michigan. And so that's the Nathaniel Wales connection. So Alfred Mellows was an electrical engineer, and he made the first self-contained electric refrigerator in Fort Wayne, Indiana. In 1916, along with uh, in partnership with J.M. Murray, uh, again, J.M. Murray was going to manufacture the refrigerators in Detroit. But it was unsuccessful. And this is the two people, Alfred Wythman Mellows and his partner, J.W. Murray, that initially started the Frigidaire Company, which Durant bought and became part of General Motors. Again, Detroit Frigidaire. So if you actually read the story, they call these guys the Frigidaire Devils. Well, there's got to be a reason why Byron and the authors wanted you to investigate Frigidaire. And I think the reason is it will lead you to William C. Durant, to Detroit, to the manufacture of these items in Detroit. And I think that's one of the aspects that's built into this puzzle with these people. So let's go. Since we talked about refrigeration a little bit, talked about the history of the refrigerator, and those types of things. The next item is to talk about the foods in the refrigerator. Okay, so we're going to talk about the foods that are in the refrigerator. So malto meal is pretty obvious. It's here. Malto meal, it was founded as the Campbell Cereal Company by John Campbell, a miller in Owatonna, Minnesota. He invented malted barleys, and he did this in order to compete with a cream of wheat. The company by, let's say, the mid 40s was headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we have malto meal in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I think I'm going to find Minneapolis, St. Paul connections in the book as well, in maybe some other areas. But let's just keep in mind that the malto meal in this picture is in the refrigerator. Malto meal did not need to be stored in the refrigerator, folks. Malto meal is a dry cereal product. So, Ben Asen, why did you put your malto meal in the refrigerator? Did Byron tell you to put it in the refrigerator because he wanted it included with the refrigeration? Oh, I just got the joke. The joke is it's cold in Minnesota. Ah, ah, ah. You guys are so clever. So clever. So your malto meal did not need to be in the refrigerator. Okay, so I suppose the Gold's horseradish probably did need to be in the refrigerator after it was opened. And so this bottle, however, looks to be 100% full. But so why do you have a horseradish in the image? Unless you're trying to point out that you have hors d'oeuvres, horse-duvers, as we used to call them in the 80s, and we have horseradish in the refrigerator. Okay, well, the Gold Company was founded by Tilly and Hyman Gold in their Brooklyn, New York apartment building. And she originally bottled this by hand, and by 1956, the company built a factory from the ground up at 895 to 905 McDonald Avenue in the Kensington neighborhood of Brooklyn. So that's where the Golden Horseradish Company had its production facilities when this book was written. It was the biggest. So Gold's had the largest root cellar in the world. Gold's was quoted by Crane's New York Business newspaper as the largest player in the domestic market for processed horseradish, and makes more horseradish at its plant than any other manufacturer in the country. So we're talking about refrigeration. We're talking about the largest root cellar, cellar, not seller. And so this huge, huge root cellar is where? And it's talking about refrigeration. Okay. So I talked about a large cold storage facility in St. Louis in the caves. I've talked about a large storage facility in Brooklyn for horseradish. Now let's look at Hellman's. So let's go talk about Hellman's. And you've got to believe that Hellman's was included because of the devil, right? And your mayonnaise would actually need to be uh, refrigerated, right? And Hellman's basically started out in, again, another, I think it's Richard Hellman was the guy who started it. And I'm pretty sure this is another New York invention. Yeah, so again, Hellman's another story. Let's see if we can pull up Richard Hellman. So he was a German businessman, and he was in New York City. Get this blue ribbon. He became a citizen in the 1920s. Interesting, the small mayonnaise factory was at 120 Lawrence Street. Okay. Lawrence is going to be mentioned a number of different times in The Secret. And I don't know if it's because they're referring you to the St. Lawrence Seaway or some other reason. But I think the reason the Hellman's bottle is in here is to get you to the start of Hellman's Blue Ribbon Mayonnaise, and their factory was on Lawrence Street. And I think that's the reason that's in here. Let's talk Tabasco. Now, previously, we talked about Henny. Oh, crap. I just closed up. I think I just closed the one I wanted. Now I have to open that up again. Tabasco. So anyway, we're going to talk about Tabasco. And we now know that the Edmund McElhenney, and remember we had Henny Youngman, right? So we just met Henny Youngman in a couple pages before, and now we're going to meet Edmund McElhenney. And remember, we had this whole Edward and Edwina named after him. And so I think there's going to be a number of Edmunds. And I think that's going to play into this. So let's look at McElhenney. And so let's see, where is McElhenney? Edmund McElhenney. So Edmund McElhenney, he's an American businessman, and he started this Tabasco company. He was born in Hagerstown, Maryland, and he moved to New Orleans. There you go. This is probably why all those people think it's in New Orleans. Well, what's your cold storage? What's your cold storage down there? I mean, you're using this preservation hall as your idea, but where's your cold storage? Because the story is about cold storage. It's not really about hot storage or a hot place. It's just a hot food seasoning, if you will. But so if you really like, we're introduced to Henny. earlier. So that's kind of, I guess, the gist of the Henny. And if you like New Orleans a lot, then maybe this is the back of the book confirmation where you get to a Henny, a McElhenny, that gives you some confirmation that you could maybe be looking at New Orleans. Now, I've not liked New Orleans because I think there's so much more about this puzzle that talks to St. Louis. Um, but if you couple the fact that earlier I introduced you to who I thought was Richard Simmons, right? And Richard Simmons was the guy that was pictured in the Milton Teagle, otherwise known as Richard Simmons, who worked as a maitre d' at Derrick's in Beverly Hills, but who came to Beverly Hills and opened up the asylum for the sweat sylphs. Was is a New Orleans native, and you couple this with your Tabasco sauce, you're starting to make a case. I hate to say it. So anyway, so there's a little maybe of how you could go about putting that together. My last note on this is that the White Westinghouse and the sewing machine company bought Frigidaire in '79. So the White Sewing Machine Company, based in Cleveland, Ohio, ended up buying Frigidaire in 1979. So using Frigidaire as your jumping off point for the story, you now can get to Cleveland by knowing that in 1979, the White Sewing Machine Company bought Frigidaire. Now, I'm just going to point out that when this book was written, many of the appliances called refrigerators were being made in upstate New York, and we just had Henny Youngman, our joke fiend, talk about Washington Irving during this trip to the Catskill Mountains. And if you consider there were some large manufacturing plants north of the Catskill Mountains where they made these refrigerators, which are shown to you on the next pages by some of the large Sears and Roebuck line of refrigerators were made there. And so I just think that you might be getting led to another possible solved location by knowing where these refrigerators were made. And so when we come back and talk about the other appliance, which is the washing machine, and where we have the Scrubabus coming out, maybe there'll be some more information that we can look at there. So that pretty much wraps it up for this analysis of the household unfamiliars and what's in the refrigerator. There is an odd item below the grate, and I haven't been able to figure out what that picture is. It's like a half-open candy bar or something. It's at the very lower right-hand corner of the refrigerator next to the celery. And that was put in there, and I don't know if that was superimposed, but there is something going on in the bottom of that image, and I don't know what it is right now. And it's bothering me. So I've had a cold for a week. I'm going to jump off before I start coughing phonetically again. So thanks so much for joining me. I'm going to go check the chat, see what's going on, if anybody joined in. Hey, so Hellman's deviled eggs. Damn right. Let's have us some deviled eggs tonight. That's what I'm thinking. Good stuff. Well, hey, thanks for coming over and joining me for this presentation. I've had this cold for a week, and so I will hang up this stream, and we will chat with you all later about the secret.